We all have our own stories. How you decide to remember them is up to you. Each ring I own holds my stories. Just like the silver which it has been forged, they are as precious to me as the tales themselves. And today, I'm gonna tell you them. From start to finish.
Growing up, I really never wore a whole lot of jewelry until I saw Clocks and Colours. So this was the winter of 2022. I just turned 19 and the thought of getting tattoos was lingering in the back of my mind. I was always too afraid to go for it because I was afraid of what my parents were going to say. You know, their youngest child getting something permanently inked on their body forever. But yeah, safe to say that that's changed now. Back then, I started buying Clocks and Colours rings as an alternative to tattoos to signify important stories of mine in the same way that tattoos do. They are handcrafted pieces made of sterling silver that really mean a lot to me, and I guess the difference between rings and tattoos is these rings I'm planning on passing down to my children later on in life.
Try a little bit. Maybe down here. I don't know.
Lake Taupo for me has always felt like a second home. It's a place where I've captured some of my best images and experienced some unforgettable trips. Here is where I'd say my first spark for photography really began. I was 10 years old with this little, Lumix digital camera, and I was just shooting anything and everything around Taupo. And I was absolutely hooked for the 7 days we were there until I got back to Auckland where I had Wi-Fi again and, forgot about that whole photography passion for a bit. Although the spark wasn't big enough to ignite the fire that it is today, I still credit a lot of my passion towards photography, wildlife and the outdoors, specifically to Taupo, because for me that's basically where it all began. Little batch is tucked away, and for the most part it hasn't changed in the past 50 years, which is exactly what I love about it. There's no Wi-Fi, you have to wash and dry your own dishes by hand, and it is just filled with small old knickknacks. But by far my favourite part about it is you can look out the window in the morning and you'll see just a plethora of different wildlife. You have rabbits, quail, tuis, fantails. It's just such a beautiful spot to be in. I just can't put it in any better words. It's just so beautiful. I've been coming up to Taupo for literally as long as I can remember. So every time I come up for, a trip, I'm always coming away with something new. I guess for the 18 years that I've been coming down here, I've learned a lot of lessons, that's for sure. But the one lesson that stands out to me the most is gear can be replaced, but the photos and memories can't. Now, it sounds corny, but what I mean by this is at the very start of the year, I came down to the river to shoot a Lego kingfisher in the water. And what ended up happening was I was walking through the river and I placed my foot on one of the rocks and it just slipped out from underneath me, and I ended up plunging my 7-year-old camera straight into the water, killing it instantly. That camera had essentially built the foundation of my photography, and the camera that had done so much for myself had died in the very place I, cherished so much. But at the time I started diving into film photography, and I was using my dad's 1993 Pentax, point and shoot camera. And I thought this would be a perfect photo opportunity. I mean, my camera's just died in this lake, so how about we place it on this, dead tree next to the very lake that it died in, and basically take a memorial photo for it. So again, I found Lake Taupo reigniting a new passion of mine, and that was film photography. Again, Lake Taupo had me, falling in love with an art form all over again, which was another point to add to the list of why I love this place so much. Now, the first time I saw the heritage ring, I felt like I was looking straight at Taupo. And with this place being so extremely special to me, I had to get something to commemorate it. I've had it for almost 4 years now and practically wear it almost every day. And you can see all the chips and scratches, which for me adds more value to it. It shows the grit and the test of time of wearing it. If Clocks and Colours and I ever collaborate on a piece, I would definitely want to try and represent Taupo as best as I can. That would just be a dream and a half. I mean, this ring alone already encompasses so much about the place. The mountains and wildlife, and I guess the homely feel it all has, and just how much this place has inspired me as a creative and, also as a person. So I guess the more I visit, build memories and also capture great photos, the more important this ring becomes. I'll always hold this place close to me, and, one day I really hope I can buy a place down here. With music being such an important part of my childhood, listening to bands and musicians such as Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters, Johnny Cash, Linkin Park, I mean, there's no surprise that I eventually picked up an instrument. It was probably the 4th grade when my grandfather took me to my first music shop, where I would buy my very first guitar, a blue nylon guitar, and I would eventually use that to practice at school. Then eventually when I moved into middle school, it got super serious super quick. I just remember after school being in this cold, damp room with this big bloke who would just give us 2 songs to learn every week. See, back in primary school when we learned how to play the guitar, it was 1 song a week and the teacher would do the best she could to help you learn it. But now in middle school, we were trying to do 2, maybe 5 songs a week, and that ultimately just diminished my passion for playing the guitar. It felt like a chore at this point, and that would lead to me dropping the guitar and, not picking it up for another 6 years. So by this point, it was 2020, and we were in the middle of the COVID lockdown here in New Zealand. And with absolutely nothing to do, I decided to buy a steel string guitar off Trade Me. Now the images showed what looked like a really high quality steel string guitar, and it was really cheap. It was like 99 bucks. I bought it, it came in within a week, and it was a knockoff. I had no other choice. I wasn't going to send it back, so slowly but surely I started learning to play the guitar again. And then I went to my very first Foo Fighters concert, and it literally felt like each chord was just rattling my ribs. For someone who's listened to Foo Fighters pretty much their whole life and started learning a few songs on the guitar, I feel more inspired than ever to learn more and more songs. I know I'll never master the guitar, but I think that's what makes it so enjoyable, is you can't pick up the guitar and expect it to play like Jimi Hendrix, you know? Like, there's just no fun in that. If it was easy, it wouldn't be fun. The struggles, the screw-ups, and the countless takes are really important in testing who you are.
Why the f would I hit it there? No!
If you want to find out if you're a good musician or not, film yourself trying to do a song in one take. It will humble you very, very quickly. And then the payoff being that you hear your favorite song coming from your own fingers is just an incredible feeling. After you learn that song, you move on to the next one, and it's just a continuous cycle that I'm really happy I got back into. And before it's too late, I definitely want to do a live show at least once in front of, you know, a real audience, because I've done countless shows myself where I've got my headphones on, listening to live Foo Fighters concerts, and just playing along, you know, chord for chord, you know, pretending I'm on stage. But man, I just know I have to do a live performance at least once. I mean, my uncle does a lot of them where he's playing the guitar and singing, and he always says just, you know, go for it, because it's always going to be great, you know, no matter if you f*** up. I've definitely got to do it at least once. So for me, the 6-string ring represents practice, passion, and all the people who've inspired me to play. Not just musicians, but friends and family as well. Yeah, it's just a badass ring. I think when it comes to the outdoors, fishing is and always will be one of my favorite things to do, you know, maybe besides photography. Whether I catch something or not, it's always been very enjoyable for me. And fishing has been in my family for years, and I'm really not too fussed where I fish, whether that be on a wharf, a kayak, small tinny that can only fit, you know, 3 people, or a boat big enough for, you know, the big trips. As long as there's fish in the area, I'm happy. This is basically where we would launch almost every time with the big boat. It hasn't changed a lot in the past, I guess, 15 years that I was visiting. It was probably 2018 the last time I launched off this place. It's good to see that it hasn't changed much though. You know, I have so many memories on that old boat. But there's one memory that tops all of them, and it was the last trip I did with my dad, my uncle, and myself all together. It was a warm October morning in 2018, so we just set off past Rangitoto. We were probably fishing for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So, you know, my Uncle Paul and my dad were catching fish left, right, and center. Meanwhile, I'm on the other side of the boat with my reel just waiting for something to happen. And eventually it does. And I reel in the smallest fish of that day, and it was probably only about this big. It was just a little snapper, and you know, the boys had a good laugh about it. You know, obviously they're catching the bigger fish while I've got the, you know, little small snapper. But anyway, I snapped on a new soft bait, casted it out, and I waited. It was really odd because it's almost like I snagged something. Like all of a sudden there was like a weight put onto the hook. That confused me because I didn't think I let the line out that far enough for me to be hitting the bottom or, hitting any reefs. And so I looked at my dad and I was just like, I think I've got something. And he said, oh, well, pull it in then. I go to reel it in just a little bit and there's still that weight, but there's nothing pulling at it. So I'm really confused at this point. There's something definitely on the end of this line. So I start slowly reeling just to figure out what's going on, and then all of a sudden it just arches out of nowhere, and all of a sudden I've got a big fish on the line. So I'm doing the classic, pull up and then wait for it to stop, reel it in, and then I'm just doing this over and over again. I also remember very vividly my dad going, oh shit, Paul, I think he's got a big one. So that added a little bit more pressure to it, and then I began to see colour, and it was a snapper. It wasn't just a small one though, but it was a big snapper. And already there were chairs in the boat for it, and so this was by far the most, this was so stressful, this part. So I used the hook and started to lead the nose into the net, and my dad pulled it up, and right away everyone was so excited. Paul was shaking me by the shoulders, cheering, and my dad was happy, and it's like, holy shit. It was a massive fish. And it's funny because I put those boys to shame, went from the smallest snapper of the day to literally the biggest one in probably a good few years. So we took the fish back to the fishing shop and we weighed it there, and it was 16.6 pounds, which is, roughly 7 kgs, which is a monster for a snapper. I remember we went to go fillet it at Paul's place, and almost like one half of the fish was enough to feed the whole street. And it was ridiculous how much meat we had just from that one fish. And it was truly my best memory on that boat for sure. Hence why I'm telling it to you now. And that was the last trip that we had on that boat altogether, as Paul passed away about 8 months later after that trip. But I couldn't be more grateful that our last trip was that one, because it was by far the most memorable one and also the most cheerful one, I guess. It just felt like there was a lot more laughs in the boat, and also, catching that massive fish was also another big kicker. And right here, I've actually kept the jawbone of the fish that I caught. This is also just another awesome reminder of that trip. I also created a little memorial piece for the other half of the jawbone, and penciled in a little date, creating this in woodworks at high school. It's little mementos like these that are truly irreplaceable. Yeah, it sits very closely along the safe harbour ring. Safe harbour for me also just encompasses a lot about why I love fishing so much. It's not just about the fish that you catch, because honestly I could go out on that same trip and not have caught any of those fish and still had a great day. The fish are just a bonus, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. It's always great. So for me, this ring just reminds me of the sea, the great fishing experiences, and all the unique experiences of just catching a fish of a lifetime. It'll be a very, very long time until I catch another big snapper like that, and I'd love to have another opportunity to do that and have a second lot of jawbone sitting right next to it.
In this stage in my photography career, everything is very, very uncertain. I like to think that things are heading in the right direction. I mean, I was just able to work with two of my favorite brands in the world, that being Clocks and Colours and the Lego Group, and being able to do that in the same year as well is really, really cool. Considering it's my first year out of university and schooling, things are still all a bit scary, but it's not about the money you make, but the stories you come back with, and that has always been at the forefront of my photography trips. Yes, I want to capture great photos, but I also want to represent stories through them as well. These rings are just another way of signifying that. And all these stories that I've talked about today are so important to me and have crafted the person that I am today. And each of these rings represents that so well, and I always wear them with pride. I don't know where my camera's going to take me next. I mean, we're coming close to the end of 2025 and it's already been an insane year, and I haven't even left the country yet. So hopefully next year I'll get a few more opportunities to leave the country, build a whole new range of new stories and photos, and get a few more rings that represent some really cool stories. I mean, if you made it to the end of this video, I'm so grateful, because this is a very deep and personal video for me. It goes through all the different stories throughout my childhood, and the fact that you sat through all of that listening to me ramble basically I'm very grateful. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like, share it around, and I'll see you in the next video.